Well, good afternoon to you, Aaron. And I'm glad that your journey from Denver to here was most wonderful and you got to be greeted by a lovely procession. And it was celebration of love. So the celebration of love is what we are going to be conveying here today with, of course, the device that dear Aaron has been working with in his dynamical fields of Tesla light instruments. So we are gathered here today along with dear Lucy Robertson, who is also here joining us from the University of New Mexico. She is a very key member of the student government body here in Taos. And we are going to conduct some studies utilizing the scientific instrument of my dear colleague, Dr. Konstantin Korotkov. And my name is Krishna Madappa. I live here in Taos. I'm one of the co-founders of our institute, which is called Institute for Science, Spirituality and Sustainability, that we founded a few years ago with two of my other colleagues, Dr. Gary Schwartz and Dr. Marty Hewlett. So, I have been very closely involved with Dr. Korotkov over almost well over 10 plus years now in utilizing his device, which is called electrophoton capture, also known as GDV, gas discharge visualization. And today our study will be affiliated with how we gather data of, we are going to be participants, so Lucy has offered her services, so we capture data from all the 10 fingers, and we will do this both at a parasympathetic field and a sympathetic field. So with this, I would like to discuss some of the principles of how we capture the information. So now I'm going to turn to the screen. So here's how we begin. We have the device which is right here. And this is where we capture the data. What we are looking at there is this, which is a fiber optic glass electrode, and each finger starting from the right hand thumb is placed on the electrode at this configuration, and for half a second there will be a cascading of photons and electrons that you see being cascaded precisely for half a second. That in turn passes through a CCD camera and then interpreted by the software, and of course development of software, as you know, is most important. So the development of software as undertaken in Russia, in St. Petersburg, Russia, where Dr. Korotkov has his company, and with a group of other wonderful researchers and scientists and mathematicians, they have been developing the software and continue to develop the software in non-linear field. So in using principles of non-linear mathematics and Fourier transforms, Lagrangian equations, etc., the algorithms which are then compiled are able to extract data at very, very, very deep level. So when you had heard me mention earlier that we are gathering data from parasympathetic field, which encompasses, here I will show this next screen. And in this next screen, what we are looking at here is data captured from all the 10 fingers. That in turn will give us information of an energy field, then which in turn gives us information of how energy is transferred to every organ system of the body, both on the left side and the right side. When we look at energy field figures, we see precisely physical energy distribution, emotional energy distribution, psychological energy distribution, and our relationship of inner state to the outer world. So for simple purposes, we can call it our spiritual field. And that is the deep science of how Konstantin has developed his device over the last 25 years. And now with us, we have dear Lucy Robertson here, who is a senior member of the student body. So dear Lucy, I accept to participate in the study because I'm recording and capturing data. So please also provide your consent to dear Aaron.
Yes, I consent to participate in this study.
So we get ready to capture data now. So see what, okay, so ready. We may have a lot of light induction, but let's see how it works out. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Excellent. Good. third,
Ready?
four. Were you ready? Again?
Ready.
Okay. 5.
Okay. Ready.
Okay.
Ready.
Okay.
And ready.
Excellent. So now we'll go. We will save data. What we have just captured now is data of that will give us all information of physical, emotional, psychological, and relationship of inner state to the outer world. So we call that the parasympathetic system. So now we apply a filter, and the filter separates the latter three, which is the physical, which is the emotional, psychological, and the spiritual, and we get to see strictly the physical energy distribution. An important note over here, what we are measuring and what we are observing is energy distribution through the entire field, entire dynamical field.
Ready.
Okay?
Next. Next. Next.
Okay?
Next.
Okay? Okay?
Okay. Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. So now we've captured data from here. We are looking at the screen that gives us what we call a diagram screen, and you see a diagram screen. So in this diagram screen we have two elliptical shapes. One is the left side of the body and the other one is the right side. And we can see all across here, if I take the cursor and I move it to this point, it will say coronary vessels. This one is mammary glands, respiratory system. Here is spleen. So let's go here, cardiovascular system. And then we have transverse colon. So like that we go to cervical area. So then we have lumbar area. So you can see digestive tract, kidneys, the spinal column, the whole endocrine system. So you have the hypothalamus, and then you have the thyroid. All this is fully accented, one on left and right. Now, what we are also looking at here, when we look at the red is the parasympathetic field, and what we are observing in here is the information that is contained in how energy distribution passes through both the sides, left and right. What we see in the center, now I'm going to describe the inner circles. The inner circle here is hypofunction of energy. This green band is stable function of energy, and the outer band is hyperfunction of energy. And how is this determined? This is determined by age entropy classifications. And age entropy class is based upon, of course, the age of Lucy and studies that were done now, well over 15,000 studies, which offers the database, how all this information is then recorded, quantified, and all most of this data is, of course, all done in St. Petersburg with Dr. Korotkov. So, what we are observing here is some of the detail. And when we look at the detail, and let us observe the configuration of the red. And we observe the configuration of the red on the left side, it correlates to the right brain, and on the right side it correlates to the left brain. So we can see that the right brain activity of dear Lucy is that she is a very creative person. And you see that creativity over there is also quite well organized, because you can almost scribe a whole circle across over here. But on the right hand side, which correlates to the left brain, we can see that there is some very deep thoughts that Lucy is very likely undertaking within her, and hence we see that there is a big spike, and this big spike over here is in area of, again, the spleen, and another one that, again, these are reflective areas. Now, we look at these values, 0.73, 0.59, and 0.73 and 0.59 show that predominantly most of the red is within the green area, which is the stable area. This one we'll see in parenthesis, 0.37 and 0.67 shows the correlation of the left and right hemispheres of the brain. For Lucy's age classification, the range anywhere from 0.28 to 0.42 would be in stable range. So we can see that on the right brain is 0.37, in the left there's 0.67. So there is some thoughts, very cognitive thoughts, that have still not come to a state of fruition. Would you?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So that's one field. Now we go and we look at the blue line. And the blue line is the sympathetic organization of energy distribution, and we can see that predominantly most of all the blue is almost a clear circle. However, they are predominantly in a range which is in the beige area. So in the beige area, let's click here, we can see value 1.29 and 1.21. So this is a little on higher, and it's very likely that her informational exchange in her autonomic nervous system is more accented. So, but predominantly, let us look at some specifics. We can see that the respiratory system, its value is 1.54, that is high. And similarly, right nostril, left nostril. So it is very shallow breathing of system. So on one level, we can see that if there is less oxygen in the system, then of course the system is having to put out more information. So this can in turn raise the level of entropy of the field. So this is one of the, but of course from here we can go into charts of this nature that gives us a collective area that we call integral area, which of left and right, integral entropy between the left and right, and activation coefficient. Activation coefficient is more like a stress index, and we can see that the activation coefficient here is pink is hypo, this is stable, and this is now stress levels are beginning to heighten. It does not mean that stress is anything that is detrimental. It is purely an observation. We are making observations here. And then here this chart gives us a tabled value of precisely every organ system of the field, completely from all the organ systems, and this in turn have classified values on the left and the right. And of course, you know, in Russia data is very, very vital. So the more data that we can obtain, the clarity of observation, clarity of analysis is also heightened. Is it not?
Right.
So here is also coded by shades of color, as we saw in the diagram chart, the elliptical diagram chart. Green is stable, the cream is hyperfunction. So we can see that there are some areas, and this is without the filter, which means I'll call that the total field, the parasympathetic field. And here we can now look at data with the filter. Oh, let's see here, there, with filter. And we can see that dear Lucy is indeed, she is flying high. From here, we now look at energy distribution through the whole system. So when we look at energy distribution through the whole system, now we are beginning to observe what we call the energy field of the parasympathetic field, the energy field of the sympathetic field. So between the two, here in this chart we look at shades of colors, and the shades of colors are given in 4 fields in the visible spectrum, because for those who really want to have deeper science, the science over here is that is the bandwidth of nanometers in light, anywhere from close to 300 nanometers, 350 nanometers, to about 450 nanometers is the range. So we have blue, so we can take closer analysis here. Blue symbolizes physical energy distribution, violet is emotional energy distribution, pink is psychological energy distribution, and the orange is our inner relationship to the outer world. So let's call that spiritual. And we can see that Dear Lucy is really strong fields of data, but you can see that it's all the way around, but it's also very staggered fields. The moment there is thought that has come in. Here we see that on one level, the physical energy distribution, the sympathetic field, is really strong, and in values, symmetry of this is 94%, which means that's energy distribution through the 2 fields, right and left, is 94%. When we induce thought, that opens up the gateways for other various analysis of emotions, etc., it is 81%. So then we can also rotate the information on this side too, and we can see that how the energy distribution is. We can see that on the sympathetic field, it's very strong field, 29, almost 30,000. Here it is 21,000. It's a little lower. It's a little lower. And then we can rotate to the left side. And here we see it's again about 22,000, and it is 31,000 here. But there is some strong activity. There must be some event going on in your head, like maybe a disturbance, headache related, some possibly a...
I mean, it aches.
Yes, yes. Okay, because you see this gap, you see that opening right there, that opening, and I'll blow it up a little more.
And it's also something I've equated with when I had the experience on that bed, the electromagnetic resonance bed.
Yes, okay.
That went away for one day. Otherwise, that's just this kind of fatigue with a kind of headache.
Okay, so all right. So then from this chart we can get also a lot of data too. Not only do we have information, but we look at data like this. We can go specifically to a thumb. So this is the right hand thumb, and we can see how is information gathered, and this is all sectored into quadrants, and this sectoring of quadrants is based upon Chinese medicine. So principles of how acupuncture points are transmitting data. So this deep level of research is where Konstantin and his team have been involved in over the last 25 years with various Chinese doctors. One of them is Dr. Sujok. And of course Dr. Hiroshi Motoyama, and also Peter Mandel in Germany. And when we look at chakras, and we can look at that as the next field, but I would like to also show another parameter here of what we can observe is parameters of energy fields and the diagrams. So what we are looking here is bar charts that specifically show the correlation between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic field, what we saw in the chart. So this is the right side, front, and the left. Right side, and again this shows its value. Area is the measuring of pixels, and the measuring of pixels is the distribution of how the colors were correlated to each diagram, parasympathetic field and the sympathetic field. So then we have cumulative entropy, and we can see that entropy is very high here at the parasympathetic field. Similarly, so that is also strong activity, mental activity. That mental activity that is boiling. And then we have also symmetry. Now, from this chart, we will go and we will now observe the nature of dear Lucy's chakra field. So let's look at chakra fields all the way together. And so here is what we are looking at. The chakra field from the root chakra to the crown chakra. So here is the heart, and we see that cumulatively Lucy is very, very strong person. But there is one consideration over here, because chakra number 2 is being switched very strongly into an emotional state. So that means that there is some activity that is in process. Strong activity in process. But otherwise, overall, this band that you're looking at right through the center is very what we would refer to the stable band, but any process within this green establishes a stable parameter based upon the age entropy that we spoke about earlier. So this is chakras. I don't. We can always go into a lot of detail later, but I just want to share a overview. Now, this one, which is in a shaded portion, now it is solid, is Lucy's sympathetic field, and how her sympathetic field responds to the cumulative fields of data that we are inducing into our system by virtue of thought. So of course this has many implications, because we are looking at events from exogenous state, and then we are looking at events which is also internal, and then we are looking at environmental state and how our relationship is to the universe. And that is how the physical chakra field responds. And we can see cumulatively this lovely young being is really a strong person with just a little bit of calibration that is required so that the prana flow is fully enhanced and thereby potentialized. So these are some of the charts from where we extract a lot of data, and of course from here we can go into details of each one. When we look at this as an example, and if I were to click there, it will give me exactly descriptor of the chakra, its values, its element, and what are its propelling fields of energy. Okay, now we can proceed to the next state, which is to the room, and where dear Lucy now could receive the information from dear Tesla's light coil. And then we'll come back, we'll gather data again, and we can then superimpose both the fields of information.
Very good. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go.